Good morning, Randy. How's it going today, bud?
Oh, good morning from Southern California. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Your coffee kicked in for you?
Well, I'm one of those guys that I can get up at 6 o'clock and at 6:15, I'm doing my first set with full weight. So
There you go.
I don't need the coffee, but I do need a lot of water.
There you go. Exactly. Well, glad that you got your workout in this morning. Good stuff. How's the weather out there in Southern Cal this morning? Good.
Well, we've been going through a little bit of a heat wave, not compared to you all, but humidity. We're not used to 80% humidity. So right now we're getting those monsoon coming up. So we're dying out here at 80 degrees.
You know what? That's a beautiful thing. We've had a very mild summer here. I think we've only hit the century mark once or twice, so I'll take it compared to what we usually at there for you. But Randy, you are a marketing rock star. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, doing some amazing things for them. And so I don't know, you got your presentation set up. I don't take anything from your presentation, but
no, I'm good.
You're good. But talk about how'd you get into what you're doing now these days?
Well, marketing actually really dovetails with what you do. Back in 2008, I was in the financial services industry, and I was also running a nonprofit, director of Philanthropy International. And when the real estate crisis hit and everybody scrambled and died, the charities came back and said, we need help.
Right.
Our donors don't donate anymore. And so we need a story. We need to, create more donor opportunities. So I took my financial background and I began working with nonprofits, and I focused 100% on marketing. And like most of us today, the internet was going, but not like it was. But if you wanted to learn something, you read a lot of books and you scoured the internet. And so for a couple of years, I did nothing but just accumulate knowledge and information about marketing, what worked, what didn't work, and began applying it to nonprofits. And then, of course, from there, it began to kind of word of mouth spreads, and you're doing it outside of the nonprofit world. You're doing it in all worlds. Mm-hmm. And of course, then the interesting thing about marketing, and you know this, Scott, is you can't rely on yesterday's knowledge, because soon everybody's doing that, and now you're looking like your old hat. So I'm always having to read. When we go on vacation, my wife often talks about how she's planning it, and I say, but when am I going to get my reading time? It doesn't win me over a lot of points, but it's a true fact in marketing. You got to stay ahead of the game.
And that's so true. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on here, because oftentimes, especially as I'm out talking with people and talking with investors, especially a lot of people, when they come out of their job or they're still working at their job while they're trying to transition into real estate as an investor, whether it's notes or fix and flips or whatever like that, it's a total different mindset, because most people don't come from that marketing mindset world. They have not had to do it in their job. Now they're having to do it for themselves. They're having to brand, build a brand, create a brand, get their word out there for you. And it's oftentimes like speaking, Latin to them, because they're not used to those type of activities. And it's just like working out. And you get better at it when you put in more reps in it, and you build that marketing muscle, right, Randy?
Absolutely that way. So, by the way, I know you like technology a lot. Let me make sure. Are you seeing and hearing me okay?
Your audio sounds good. I see you crystal clear. So yeah.
Because I'm using my DSLR camera this time. And in fact, if everybody wants to know what's the difference if you get a good camera versus didn't mean to do that. Sure. A not so good camera. So this is what I would have looked like before in a different view. And you can see the difference when you do that with upgrade your camera when you're doing these things. So, but I had to make sure it worked here. And that's what gets when you have your FaceTime video on at the same time. So anyways, technology, marketing, you got to stay out of the game.
Yep. Norm, you might audio looks good on our side over here, Norm. So you may just want to hit the refresh button on your side, Norm. Okay. You got a presentation you want to pull up and dive into, Randy, there?
Yeah, let's see if I can get everything set here. Make sure that thing's working. And bingo. Okay, let's hit share. And let's hit.
Perfect. Now, do you want to take questions during, or you want to wait till the very end, Randy? What would you prefer?
Yeah. I'll let you judge. Scott, I have no problem during. I don't need the flow to make it work. If you see one that's, hey, this would be important to stop this and let's do it, then just interrupt me and say, hey, Randy, we got a clarification we need here.
Sounds good,
whatever it happens to be.
I'm going to shut down my video. So it's all you, man, and I'll jump in as I see things pop up. Okay.
Okay. Well, good morning, and I appreciate you taking the time here today. I know you've got a full day ahead of you. As I look at the schedule, there's some, and I know some of the speakers, you've got a great day ahead here. When Scott and I talked about what this talk would be about, we came across an idea that really marketing hacks, the idea that maybe there's some things that we can do. And of course, this begs the question right away is, well, if I buy notes, or if I'm into debt refinancing, or I'm buying real estate, or those kinds of things, what in the world does this have for me? How is this going to help me? And I get the question, because if you're not selling anything, the immediate response is, well, what do I need marketing for? Well, let me give you two answers to that. Number one answer is, in reality, you're being marketed to every day. And so if you don't understand a little bit what's going on, you might end up in places you don't want to be. Let me give you an example. Have you ever had to go into a used car dealership and buy a car? Or it could be a new car dealership. And we make jokes about it. And we all know what that felt like when you walk in and someone walks up to you, and the first thing they say is, "Hey, good morning, how you doing?" And they don't know you. They really don't care how I'm doing it. And so when they say those words, I'm immediately triggered to think, oh, they're gonna sell me. And then they go through and they tell you their price. And then before long, they say, what? Well, let me go ahead and let me go talk to my boss and see if I can do this. And so he goes in the other room and they're talking and you're sitting there watching. And maybe you're sitting there with your wife or your husband or friend or whoever, and you're wondering what they're thinking. They come back and says, my boss thinks it's a great deal, but we need to sweeten it up a little bit. And so he raises the price a little bit, or he changes something, and then you go back and forth like that. We've all experienced that. And if you didn't know it, realize that that's all been orchestrated ahead of time. Those calls back and forth, they automatically know what's going on. In fact, here's a marketing hack that's really kind of different. If you ever go in to buy a car and you're going to sit down, go in there and leave your wife or your whoever you're with outside in the lot there looking at other cars. And then when you go through and he comes back and says, well, here's my deal, you ready to go? Say, well, just a minute, let me go talk it over with my wife. And then you go outside and you talk to her and you have the conversations and you walk back in. Well, it sounds really good, but we need to sweeten the deal a little bit. You kind of reverse the deck on them. And it's just a marketing strategy is the point of saying all that. So in every day, you and I are either exposed to marketing because others are doing it to us, or we get to do it ourselves. So with that, realize here that marketing is just really a part of everyday life. It shows up in the things people say to us, how we talk, how we respond, how we're triggered. And when you and I are having a discussion about some things, and you'll see that in a second here, we're actually marketing our ideas. And so if we understand how to do that well, or how to do that better, the things that we're talking about, we're more likely to be successful. The outcome we're looking for is more likely to occur if we understand some of the marketing principles. Let me give you something. And if you're in business or you've had a business, this will make sense to you, but I want to give you a point here up front. This is a business here, and you see the numbers here. There's 1,000 leads and they convert 25% of them. And that means they've got 250 customers. And let's say that each one of those customers does 10 transactions and the average sale was $100. That's going to generate $250,000 of revenue every year. And if they have a particular profit margin, we'll just say it's 62.5%, or 62.5 in terms of thousands of dollars of profit. But what if I change that number and say, I just want to increase it by 10%? And here's where people make a mistake a lot of times. I'm taking a conversion rate of 25 and I'm going to 27.5. That doesn't sound very much. Let me jump you back there a second. That looks like, well, that's just a 2.5%, but actually it's 10%. And you can see the difference. A 10% increase, bottom line, took you up over 100K, and you started at 62. Just a 10% increase can make that kind of difference in your business. And if you had a 50% increase, you go from 62,000 to 474. So sometimes we use the numbers and we say, oh, that's a 10% gain or a 50% increase. But when you're running a business, and you see the impact on leads, conversions, and transactions, that compound effect isn't just additive, It goes from 62 all the way up to 474 by a 50% increase. So that's the business reason why marketing can be so important. It's not just words, though the words are important, but the numbers can and will be significant. So if marketing isn't just all about the numbers, and if it's, well, what is it then? If it's not just that? Well, have you heard this expression before? You know, if you try enough times, or if I make enough phone calls, it just means I'm closer and closer to success. And the reality is we've been told that over again and again. And in reality, it's not true. If I take out, if I'm 68 years old, if I walked outside and I put on the bench press 500 pounds, and I tried and tried and tried and tried, I guarantee you I will fail every single time. I may be strong, but I'm not that strong. And there's nothing I can do to overcome that. So this is something we hear, and people are conditioned to think that. Well, imagine if you're in the internet and you're hearing people, and a guru gets up there and he tells you these kinds of things. And every guru says that. But they all say, you can have whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. And that becomes your mindset. And you begin believing that, and you begin taking action. And that can be a very positive thing. But what if what you're believing and acting on is absolutely impossible? There's nothing that you can do to make it happen. Again, I'm 68. There's probably not a single investment I can do today that could 100x my business in the next 10 seconds. Just isn't going to happen. Maybe a minute I could do it, but not in 10 seconds. And so there's a point in understanding that people are giving us marketing messages. They say we see 2,000 to 3,000 marketing messages every single day. So it's always coming at us. We're always having to respond to it. So we need to be aware that they're there. And one of the nice things about language and the things that happens, it doesn't happen by itself. You and I would, if Scott were to share an idea with you right now about a note, it wouldn't just be you evaluating what Scott says now. You'd be thinking about what he said yesterday, what you heard yesterday, what you think you're going to hear later on today, maybe your past experience over the last 12 months, the last 24 months. All that's going to work together. And when that ball hits, it's going to come out the other side. And it's that accumulation of all those things that's going to create a response in you. So it's never just isolated. Now I'm going to show you, I think I got 4 slides here. And tell me if these things trigger. And it's not because of what you're seeing here. It's because of what you've been thinking up until now. So if I'm marketing and I don't understand what my audience has been thinking by the time I'm speaking with them, well, then I'm going to miss the boat. So we're going to need a bigger boat here. And you can see it, it's talking about inflation. Now, for some people, if I talk to my granddaughter who's 15, this wouldn't mean anything to you. But if I was talking to a senior citizen on a fixed income that doesn't have any notes or anything providing additional income, this might scare them. And they're going to respond, and they're going to be more perhaps apt to listen to you as opposed to my 15-year-old granddaughter. Here's another one, happens to be about inflation. And for certain people, that'll trigger a reaction, and they'd be more inclined to listen because they're concerned about fixed income. And it has nothing to do with just, King Kong stomping here. It's because of what's already been going on in their mind. They're preconditioned to think that. There's another one, another popular idea here on the 4th of July. We must never revise or discount the sacrifices made. Nobody would be so foolish. Well, there's a certain part of the country that this would trigger a response. Other parts, another kind of response, and we see it in politics all the time today. And it really has nothing to do with what's being said right in front of us. It has to do with where they're coming from. Here's another one, even more recently, just a couple of days ago. Civil war is bad, but about as bad as our party requiring voter IDs. It's a hot topic today. And it's not just because of what we're saying today. It goes back generations in many instances. And here's another one. People today talking about Facebook, and Jen Psaki the other day making a comment about she's going to Facebook and how they're going to, note out disinformation. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that a scary thing or not? And people have all kinds of ideas on it. These are all marketing messages. They're meant to create a response, and they're triggering people depending on which side of the aisle they're on here. And so you and I are being triggered all the time by marketing messages. And you and I have the opportunity to trigger when we sell or when we market our services. And perhaps sometime in the next year, you'll start a business and you're going to say, how do I get people to like what I'm doing or want what I'm doing? And you're essentially asking, how can I trigger them to do that? So here's our first hack. And this is written by a guy, Herbert Simon. He was a Nobel Prize winner back in the 50s, and he has degrees in economics and cognitive psychology. And he says this, he goes, while people strive to make choices, human judgment is subjective to cognitive limitations. And you go, what in the world did he just say? Basically, he's saying there's all kinds of things going on in your head that limit your ability to freely and without encumbrance evaluate something. You can't do it. There's all kinds of triggers going on and you're not able to do it effectively. Well, if you're a good marketer and you know that's going on in your audience, then you play to those things. And that's what we see in politics today. People are playing to those things. So whether you're buying something or you're selling something, there's all kinds of these cognitive functions going on in your brain. And some happen automatically and we can't stop it. We can't help it. And I'm just going to point out 3 of them to you here. The first one is one we call availability. And this is when you make a decision based on how easy it is to bring something to mind. So right now, if we were to talk about, let's be upfront, if we were to talk about race in this country, it comes to mind because we hear about it all the time on the news. We see it everywhere. And so if you're going to make a decision about it, it's so prevalent on the news in different places. It's hard to make a decision without bringing that up. And so what the news does and what politicians do in a voting cycle and what we can do in business, if our message is permeated, in fact, Scott does this wonderfully, and he speaks out in 5, 6, 7 different channels all the time across the country, to where when people hear about notes and financing, they base their decision on how easy it is to bring something to mind. And they bring up that past information that Scott gave out. And so making a decision on a note is reflective of what they've already seen and how easy it was to remember it. And so we see that all the time in the world today. Second one we do is we call anchoring. And it's the tendency to be influenced. So you ever had an older person say, well, you know, Scott, buying a note would be really interesting, but my dad always said the safest place to put the money is in the mattress. And so they go into their bedroom and they open it up and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in mattresses. Because that was the first thing they got. It was the information that made the biggest impression. And sometimes we're that way. We don't listen to what may be good economic advice from some of the people we're going to hear about in the next couple of days, because it's not what we heard first. And so we have to fight against that cognitive bias to overcome that. And sometimes you're going to sell somebody something and you're going to come up against that wall and you're thinking, I can't believe they're this stupid. Don't they see how logical this is? And it's not because they don't see it's logical. It's not even because they're emotionally detached. It's because this anchoring has been so strong in their past. Unless you understand that, it's been very difficult to overcome that kind of objection. The last one is one we call affect. And this is making choices that are influenced by emotions that a person is experiencing at that moment. And this is what commercials do for you. This is the guy that sees a commercial right then and there. It's a pizza commercial during Super Bowl day, or it's a beer commercial and he's suddenly thirsty and hungry and he goes out and he wants to buy it right then, right now. It's the commercial that says, boy, if you could see yourself in this car driving down the street and you come to the corner and the car drives up next to you, and in that scenario, it was the pretty girl next door and she looks over at him and he smiles and she smiles. And the guy's thinking, I've got to get a Ford Mustang. And he goes into the Mustang dealer and the guy goes, hey, did you see the commercial? And they play it there in the showroom. And everybody's triggered by that emotion. And it's something we all have. There's probably 15, they call these things heuristics. And there's something we all have. And we have to be aware of the fact that whether something's available or it's anchored or there's an effect in our life, that those are the things that oftentimes trigger our buying decisions. And if we aren't aware of it, we'll end up doing things and then wonder down the road, why did we do that? And we can't understand it necessarily. At the same token, if you're in the business of marketing something or selling something or trying to get someone to join you in a venture or some opportunity, and they're not willing to do it, it may be because of one of these 3, and maybe many others as well. But these are things that are happening every single day in our life. These heuristics, these cognitive biases are going on, whether we like it or not, whether we're aware of it or not. So when you lead today and you're out walking and someone says something to you, you can always ask yourself something. Am I basing this on the emotion that I'm feeling it? I'm basing it on something I've always thought for a long time. And I'm basing it on something because I've heard so much about it. And if you can say yes to all those things, then you can at least be honest enough to say, wait a minute, I need to look at this a little bit differently. And if you're selling, then you want to make sure that you're becoming very available, that you're anchoring with your people, that you're going back to those things they probably heard when they were the first time they heard it, or you're trying to create an emotion in the marketplace so people have a tendency to choose you because their emotional response is cognitively predisposed to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's one of the reasons why marketing, whether you're selling or not, it's important to us every single day of our lives because we are being marketed to, whether it's politically, whether it's socially, or whether it's economically from the banks or from speakers that we hear all day to day. They're all going to be using these things because it's what we do. We're human, we're social. This is how we work. So the more we understand about it, the better off we'll be. So here's the second one. This is what we call network effect. And this is something you and I need to be aware of because it happens around us all the time. And if we're marketing or selling, it's something we can take advantage of. And so a network effect is this. And let's take Amazon. And Amazon, they say right now, is poised to be the first $1 trillion company if it hasn't already. And in fact, one of the questions I have is, how do you put your hand around $1 trillion? Well, if you think of it in terms of seconds, 1 million seconds is 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. And 1 trillion, which is 1,000 times more than that. Okay, hopefully my camera just flipped at me, Scott. Hopefully everything is okay.
Yeah, we're good. You still see your slides, all good.
Okay. 1 billion seconds, or excuse me, 1 trillion seconds is 1,000 times more than that. So it's 32,000 years. Amazon is poised to be the first with $1 trillion of profits. So when you think about that, what they're doing, maybe we should take effect. So here's what network effect is. You have a selection here, and it could be, just think of all the things you shop for on Amazon. And there's a customer experience as you go down here. And then from that customer experience, more and more people, if they have a good experience, they get good reviews, they get more and more traffic. And if they get more and more traffic, you might be someone out there saying, I'll never sell on Amazon, or I'll never buy on Amazon, but there's so much traffic. If you're a seller, you can't avoid it. And if you're a buyer, well, the more and more traffic there is, the sellers say, well, we got to join too. Now there becomes more and more sellers there. And if there's more and more sellers there, then more and more of the things you want to buy are there. And so Amazon keeps growing more and more and more. That network effect can't stop because now there's bigger selections, there's better customer experiences, they get more and more traffic, more and more buyers, more and more sellers, increases, and you can see it just becomes a circle that goes around and around. So this thing can speed up or it can slow down. Like during the pandemic, it slowed down. There weren't as many customer experiences, or maybe there were more because everybody was buying something now. So maybe it sped up during the pandemic. The negative side of this is sometimes it can go counterclockwise. You have a selection and it's, not so good. And so you have less sellers selling now or less buyers, which means you get less traffic. And if you don't get as much traffic, you don't get as much customer experience. So in your business right now, you can see how, well, I want to really go on the clockwise way. I want to get a great customer experience. But sometimes our business is slowing down because we're not taking advantage of a network effect. And sometimes, and if you're a seller right now in the marketplace and you're selling notes, for example, is there a network effect anywhere in the note market or in the debt market or in the financial services market where this is happening that you can join in, that you can become one of those additional sellers, and that you can then ride the wave of the network effect? Another way of looking at it is taking it really down to the bone here. I'm a business. I'm a business coach. I coach clients. I create additional revenue for them every single time. And it takes time for me to do that. So I need time. And then with that time, the client wants more of his needs met or less of his needs met. And there's a client experience from that. And if the client experience is good and they talk about it, I get more clients. But I have a limit on how much time I can spend. And if I don't have enough time or I max out, then my client needs aren't being met. and then I get a bad experience, and then I get a bad review, then I get less clients. So there's a point where each business has its own little network effect. That's a micro effect for me. And Amazon is an example of how it works in the world. But this is a marketing tool that you and I need to take advantage of. There's a cycle that goes on. In fact, there's a cycle above a cycle that says if this thing goes, they get more and more economies of scale, and they get more opinions. They get prices can go down. They get buyers can actually create economies of scale, so they can buy it cheaper, and the price for everybody goes down, and it gets cycles faster and faster and faster, not because of anything you did, but because you're part of that network effect. So as a business, looking for network effect. Number 3, and this is probably one of the most exciting ones that I see today, is there are things we can do in the pricing world that can change our business completely and turn it upside down. So let me ask you a question. And Scott, you can see if anybody does this. And you can just put in your chat box there, which to you makes more money? Upsell. And think of going to McDonald's, if you remember doing that, where they say, all right, say, I want to supersize that. I buy a medium Coke and I want to supersize it. I don't know if they say that word anymore, but the idea of going from a medium all the way up to a super big one, whatever that is, or maybe a big gulp if you're going to 7-Eleven out here. That would be one way to increase your revenues. Another way is where you cross-sell, and after they buy their Big Mac and all their stuff, you say, do you want fries with that? It's an easy offer, and it creates additional revenue. Which one do you think creates the most revenue? So put in your chat box, put a 1 if you think I should upsell or supersize it because they're already spending it, or cross-sell where they add something additional. Which one do you think has the most revenue? And let me tell you, most people guess wrong or choose wrong in this one. And then one is 21 times more profitable than the other.
Wow.
So Scott, I won't tell you what anybody else has put, but what do you think?
I said 1. I want to supersize that basically. It's little add-ons. Look at the cost.
And you know, Scott, I love that you said that, because everybody knows that you're a genius when it comes to money and managing money and things like that. And the reality is I want to supersize that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, and you say, well, why is that? And sometimes, you know, upselling is just a better way to go than cross-selling. And if you didn't know that and you were having an offer and you did it wrong, you'd be missing out on 21 times the possible income that you could have. So if you've got somebody already buying something and all you're having to do, and sometimes we call this making it a very low cost opportunity. And I don't mean dollar cost. To supersize something, I'm already drinking it. I'm just going to have a little bit more. It's not a big issue. Do I want fries with that? Well, I got to have fries over there. I don't know if I'm that hungry. It's a different mental process. It's higher cost. So when you're thinking of your particular offer, sometimes that add-on, another product, is not as valuable as just upping the service. And you'll see it now if you're not selling a business, but you buy things. If you go online and you buy things, oftentimes this is a big deal. You go buy something. Some people will say, well, hey, listen, if you get this, then you can get my extra bonus thing over here. It's another training or another video or another marketing tool. And they make that offer to you over on the side. And some people will say, well, since you've got this, why don't you go ahead and get the hard videos of this so you can watch them on your DVD player at home. So it's not getting anything more. It's the same thing, just more of it. And that one is far more powerful than just to say, cross-sell into a new idea. So it's valuable for both of us, whether we're selling or whether we're buying. So here's another question. This goes into price increases. So today, because of inflation, we're seeing everybody raise their prices. Well, can you or should you? I guess the operative question is here, can you afford to raise your prices by 10%, let's say, for example, here? So let me take you through that. So let's say you want to sell a widget for $100 and you decide to increase it by 10% to $110. does that small increase lead to a loss of customers? Oops, I went quick too fast there. Will that lead to a loss of customers? And the answer to that is probably not, but it could, depending on the elasticity of your price, whether 1 penny more means everybody bails, or you could go 100, you could double the price. So let's say you sell your widgets for $100 and it costs you $70 to produce and deliver each widget. That means you make a profit of 30 bucks. So if I had to go from 100 to 110 per widget, now I'm making an additional $10. And that's pure profit. That $10 I didn't have, there's no cost associated with it. It is pure profit. And that was a 33%, jump back there. That's a 33% increase. That $10 over the 30 I made, I just raised my profit by a third, a 33% increase, that $10 here. So for this business, if they wanted to make $1,000 of profit and they sold for 100 bucks, they'd have to sell 33 1/3 widgets, because they make 30 bucks a widget, right? So 30 bucks times the 33 1/3, they get their, make sure I see that, 33 1/3, they're 1,000 bucks. But if I increase it by 10%, I only need to sell 25. I make $8. What's that? $8.30 more. So if I take that $8.30 and I divide it by the $33, or the $33 that I was going to sell it for, I found out that I can actually lose, boy, my slides are going automatically here. I could lose 25% of my clients. So let me go back there, because these were automatically, I don't know why that happened. So here, if I raised it, I could actually take it to the 110. I could, let me stop here a second here. My slides are going really crazy on my screen. Is that doing it on yours too, Scott? I can't tell here.
It looks like it's doing okay.
Yeah, mine's, it's just auto advancing back and forth, and I'm not sure, I've never seen PowerPoint do that. So I'm not touching it, it's just doing this on its own. I got somebody taking control here, and there's no automations on the slides. So the bottom line, I won't look at the slide then. So if we had $100 and we go to 110, and this is a big global picture here. If you go from 100 to 110, that $10 that you increased is pure profit. Compared to the $30 that you had originally, it's a third more. So if I go back and I say, well, if I'm making that third more and I want to make $1,000 of profit, how many customers do I need to do that? Well, if I'm making 30, I need 33 1/3 customers. 33 1/3 times $100 gives me my $1,000 of profit. If I raise it to 110 and I'm selling it the widgets, then I only need to sell 25. Well, that means I've got 8.3 customers difference between those two. So if I raise my price and I wanted to make $1,000 of profit, I could afford to lose 8.3 customers down to 25, and I'd still make my $1,000 of profit. So when asking, can I raise my prices? I can afford to lose 25% of my customers and still break even. Now, I did it on $1,000 with the widget. On this slide, what you see in front of you now, it takes a guy making $1 million a year. He's got a profit margin of 15%. So he's got a net profit of 150 grand. He wants to do a 5% increase here. Net revenue is $1,050,000. So he's got an increase of profit of 50 grand. His new net profit is 200 grand. So you see the 50,000 increase. His increase in profit percentage was 33%, the 5 versus the 15. We have a gross profit margin, not important to us here. So we had 1,000 customers. How many did he lose by that price to get the same revenue? And if you look down toward the bottom, number of customers you could lose and still maintain the same original net profits, I could lose 250. I could lose 250 customers. Percent of those customers, it's 25%. I started out with 1,000. I could lose 250. So if you're in your business today and you're thinking about a price increase or wondering why are prices going up, is because businesses realize a 10% increase isn't going to affect most people. They'll keep buying. Some people will go into another store, another vendor perhaps, but most people will stay. And I know that I can afford to lose 25%. When I was growing up as a kid in New York, there was a car. It was called a Corvair. And it was a Chevy, and Chevrolet made a decision. It was Ralph Nader, a consumer advocate, wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed. And he just blitzed that Corvair. It caused death. And Chevy made a decision. They said, if we just keep this car out here, we know that we're going to have 50 people that are going to die. And if we lose the lawsuits, we're going to have to pay $100,000 times that. And so they figured that's a bottom line number. This is costing us to repair this. And they said, but if we go back to our production lines and make the modifications, it's going to cost us 5 times that amount. So they left the bad car in place, and people lost their lives, but it was an economic decision. They could afford to lose 50 lives because the economics made sense. And it's a terrible example of the morality of a car company, at least back in the day, but it shows the power of economics. If you're in your business and you're looking at raising a price, what you need to know is if you did raise your price by 10%, how many people would leave? If you had a commission product and you raised your commission percentage, if a company raised their commission, would you still buy it? Because they're looking at saying if 25% or less leave, then we're raising our prices. This is another reason why consumer advocacy works so well in the marketplace. Somebody makes a political decision, and they've made the decision that said, majority of people aren't going to change how they think about us. And so they move forward. Then the public outcry goes up and they get a response. And if it's more than 20, I'm using the number here, but it could be different. If more than 25% of our voting bloc responds to this, we need to change because we can't afford that. And so they look at those numbers, the responses coming in, and if it's too big, they back off. If it's not, they just say, hey, that's the cost of doing business. And it's not a situation where they're ignoring you. It's an economic decision. So for you, if you're selling or you're marketing in your business, you can evaluate whether or not you can do a price increase. It's pure math, because the increase revenue per client times the total number of clients, you compare that against your old revenue. And how many clients at the new revenue do I need to break even? And that's a fixed mathematical number. All you have to do is do the calculation. And for most people, it's 25%, give or take. So that's a great tool for you to, how can I create revenue right now in my business? You can do this. I said 90 days. You can create revenue in the next 15 days, the next 10 days, by just raising your prices 10%. Now, there may be a reason you don't want to do that, but if you want to increase revenue, the easiest way to increase revenue is to increase your price by 10%. Here's another one. It's called the obvious. And what the obvious means is you tell them in your marketing something that's really, really obvious, but no one else is telling them. I was working with an auto mechanic, and he was trying to figure out how he was losing money on every oil change. Oil costs $5 to $7 a quart. And if you're putting 4 to 5 quarts in, you're talking 35 bucks, $25 to $35 just for the oil. And then he's got to pay the reclamation fees. Then he's got to pay for the filter. And then he's got to pay for his mechanic's time to do it. And he said, there's no way I can do this for less than 75 bucks, Randy. And he goes, but the auto guys down the street are selling it for $19.99. He goes, that doesn't even cover the cost of oil. And you and I know the only reason they do that is because they want to get more customers in to sell them something else. So what's he to do? He's not going to play that bait and switch, get them in there and then try to sell them some kind of service that costs $300. He doesn't want to do that. So what I suggested to him, I go, what do you obviously do for a client that nobody knows, but it's very obvious to you? And he goes, well, I do a 30-point safety inspection. I go, tell me about it. So he told me about the safety inspection. So today what he does, he doesn't sell an oil changing service like that anymore. He sells a bumper to bumper safety inspection that includes oil and filters and inspections, and it has 5 or 6 or 10 different points. And he markets, a lot of times he's sending it to the spouse or the wife of the husband, because she's concerned about safety more than he is many times. So, and when we got done with that, I was talking to another guy and he goes, well, I do that too. In fact, that 1995 said to do the same thing. The point of it is nobody was telling anybody. Nobody called it a safety inspection. They were telling them, this is what we're doing. So in that sense, telling them something that is obvious that perhaps even everybody does, but nobody knows everybody does it, can be a very quick way to generate business. I had a financial planner that I was working with, and he had a CFP designation, which is Certified Financial Planner. And you might see it advertised, maybe the generation people you work with are CFPs. And the organization suggests that everybody should be working with the CFP. So if you're working with the CFP, you've got the best of the best. But nobody tells anybody what it takes to become a CFP. To become a lawyer, you have to pass the bar. Everybody knows that. But to become a CFP, what does it require? Well, I took the tests. There's 5 exams you've got to take. You've got to pass all 5. Then you got to take a cumulative test at the end that takes all of them together. And it's not easy. You've got to become an expert and an HP 12 calculator to do all the kind of work. So to go through it, it's a significant accomplishment to do that. So what this financial planner did is began to market what it takes to become a CFP. And he was telling his future audience that if you're concerned about people that have competency and have understanding of financial principles, a CFP is where you want to go. And oh, by the way, I got one. Well, it changed his marketplace. And every other CFP told me, well, that was kind of foolish. Every CFP does that. But the clients, the customers, the consumer didn't know that. So if you tell them the obvious, you can change things. Another one was a school that had every teacher had to go through, there's a preschool, had to go through background checks. And every school does. Everyone, at least in California, I don't know if it's around the country, but every preschool has to go through background checks so that parents would know their children are safe. Well, when you read their materials, their marketing materials, nobody talks about that. It's almost like it was a stigma. Well, this particular school I was working with, they decided, after talking to me, let's tell everybody about background checks. Let's talk about that safety and make it front and center of your offer. And so they did that. Well, other preschools says, well, we do that. That doesn't make any difference. Everybody does that. But again, it's the consumer, the eyes of the customer. Nobody realized it. Their business grew significantly. In fact, all 3 of these had significant upticks in business because they told the audience something that they cared about, but something that was obvious to them, but the audience hadn't heard before. So that's a hack that you can do to change your business. Now, I must say to you, there's some things you don't want to talk about. Some things, for example, if you said right now in a restaurant, well, we wipe down everything. If you kind of announce that, someone might say, well, duh, I hope so. Everybody's wiping stuff down. So you got to be careful. You don't take something that's so obvious that maybe it's government mandated that everybody has to do it. So if you announce something that's been mandated, you might look a little bit foolish, or it's a little bit risky to, again, when we talk about wiping things down, or something that is so obvious that you're insulting someone's intelligence. So don't do that if you're going to tell them the obvious things. And if it's expected, obviously that would be something like that. The last one on the hacks here is what I call a market dominating position. And if you're marketing or you've been marketed to, you've experienced this. Something I always say, the easiest way to grow your business is to clarify your message. And if you want to dominate in your market, then you need to have a crystal clear message, what it is you do, the problem you solve, and how somebody can get a hold of it. You've got to become crystal clear. You don't want to become high cost where people have to try to figure it out. And you and I have experienced this. If you go to websites today and look at them, you can read it and you'll say, what in the world are they selling? I have no idea by looking at the website. So clarify your message. Become relevant, valuable, and meaningful in what you offer. And what does that mean? And I'm going to use Scott as an example because I know Scott. So how does Scott become relevant? How does he become a market dominator? Well, he's got to talk about something that people care about. Do people care about making additional income, making more revenue, having a new channel for revenue, having passive income? Do people care about that? You bet they do. So Scott's offer becomes relevant. Is Scott valuable? Does it help people avoid threats to their life? Yeah, avoid the threat of running out of money, avoid the threat of not being able to provide. Does it help them fulfill obligations that could become threats later on? Yeah, they fulfill obligations of paying their rents, of paying off their mortgages, of taking care of their kids, paying for college education, all those things. That's a valuable offer. It helps them perhaps take advantage of an opportunity. They've got some cash, and Scott can show them how they can actually create passive income for their future and retire early. So Scott's offer becomes very valuable. And then lastly, it has to become meaningful. There has to be an intersection. And I think I've got this one here. There has to be an intersection between what people care about, the C, and the action that people take. So if you're very, very, let's go back. That's wrong way, guys. Sorry about my slide presentation just ended, Scott. Let me go back here. That was funny how that happened. So to become meaningful, you want that intersection between what people care about and the action they take. And if they cross over and they intersect, and I'll show back that, if they cross over like in the first one here, that becomes more meaningful. If they're just touching, it's less meaningful. And if they don't touch at all, they're meaningless. So if you're making an offer and people don't care about it, and how do you know they care about it? Because the actions they take, they don't cross, they're not consistent. If you sold bicycles and people said, yeah, they're concerned about fitness, but they don't ever get outside the home, they don't do any activity physically at all, that's kind of a meaningless offer if you're going to sell them a bike. If they go out and they go along the beach sometime and every now and then they might rent something, well, there's a little bit of meaningfulness there. And if they're a person that already has a bike, then offering another bike is very, very meaningful. So for Scott has, if people are concerned about money in the economic future, yes. Are they already taking actions to fulfill that? Yes, they're already doing things. So Scott has a very meaningful offer. So he's relevant because it's something people care about. It's meaningful. And dare I go back? Oops. It's valuable because it allows them to avoid a threat, fulfill an obligation, and to take advantage of something in the future. So all those things mean Scott has a great market dominating position. Now, the only question is for Scott is, how is he phrasing that? So you know that he's relevant, valuable, and meaningful. What are the words? What are the languaging that Scott says? And then you can ask yourself openly and honestly, why would anybody choose you over your competition? Why? If you're in the buyer market here, let's say you don't have your own business, how does this become helpful for you? When you're out in the marketplace and you're looking at something, you need to ask yourself these three questions. Is what these people are offering, is it relevant to what I really care about? It's either it is or it isn't. It may look really, really great. I could go to a car dealer and I could see say a Maserati, and it looks smart and sexy and all those things. Is it relevant to what I care about right now in my life? No. So I don't care how much the price is. Anything else he tells me, it's irrelevant. I'm not going there. Is it valuable to me? Does it help me avoid a threat? A Maserati? No. Is it help me fulfill any obligations that I have? No. Is it meaningful between the actions that I'm taking in my life now and the things that I care about? No, it's not meaningful either. Valuable. And is it meaningful? Is the actions that I'm doing today? Well, I'm driving. So maybe you could say, but do I look for spending $250,000 on a car? Is anything I do consistent with that? No. So I've got a separation there. I'm completely meaningless. So I'm not going to buy a Maserati. But you could run that same three tests against anything else you do and determine whether or not this is logical, it makes sense. Now notice, there's nothing emotional in here. This is really deciding something, kind of going back to our very first statement here in terms of, our biases. This is looking at trying to eliminate bias as much as possible and asking ourselves some very honest questions. And then lastly, the asking yourself, why would anyone choose you over your competition? If I'm talking to Scott, why should I choose Scott? over the competition? Asking myself that question. Because Scott's asking himself, why should Randy choose me over somebody else? And he knows he has to have an answer for that, because whether I say it or not, I'm asking myself that question. So if you're in business, you need to make sure you have that answer. And it can't be common. If you say, well, my prices are low, what happens next month when someone else has a lower price? You just taught somebody how to buy a lower price product. If you say it's because we've got a great inventory, a supply of product right now, well, what happens when you don't? Does that mean they should go to somebody else? So your market dominating position has to solve those three questions. If it's something that's just so common that it's not valuable anymore. So ask yourself openly and honestly that question. So market dominating position. Here's some ways you can phrase some of those things. If you were a guy that did Facebook or you knew somebody, I said languaging is the next thing Scott would do. Well, if you were in Facebook, you might call yourself the Facebook guy. Somebody that says something, someone hears that, and it's going to trigger, right? The first time they heard that, you had the term Facebook guy, it's anchored now. So now every time they hear the Facebook guy and they see it all over, that's talking about something you see all the time. We talked about that at the very first time. Now we're going to see that. And if I have the Facebook guy and I put some emotional twist to it, I'm taking those three triggers right up front and I'm tying it to my name. So when Scott does those things, or whoever's doing the Facebook, they're in a better position from a marketing. Networking, the first lady of marketing, the first guy of note selling, the note guy. I do this. I find you 100,000 in 45 minutes without spending another dollar on marketing or advertisement. That's what I say every single day, many, many times. I'm trying to be the only guy that says that. I'm trying to trigger those biases. What if I put $10,000 in your pocket in 18 days, or I put $10,000 in your pocket in 45 minutes? I am trying to trigger some of those things. I'm trying to dominate by becoming valuable, relevant, and meaningful in the marketplace. The general of new business, if you're a military man and you're running in a uniform, you're running an ad, that might be how you're going to position yourself. A speaker coach for small business coaches. The general of new business for accountants. All these things are ways to put language. They're going to go back to that becoming relevant, meaningful, and going back to those cognitive biases that we talked at the very beginning. So the language that you use with some of these marketing principles can set yourself apart. And if you're on the buying side, then listen for the language that people use and then ask yourself, am I being triggered? Do I see the value? Do I understand the relevancy? Do I see the market value of what's going on here? So here's something that I wanted to close with, and kind of shows you what I do and why I do what I do. In our business, I've got 50 different strategies that I deal in marketing. And these are strategies. Digital marketing might have 20 different tactics that you can do. Facebook, the kinds of channels that you do, each one of those is a different tactic under the digital marketing strategy. So what I did here is I took 10 of them. And you can see there's a market dominating position, leads, alliances, joint ventures, digital marketing. And I said, if you were in a business today, and you can see in the center there, it says, and you had $1 million of revenue. And I took each of these 10 categories and I just increased them, your revenue, by 2%. Remember that slide very earlier? I said the opening slide was 62,000. If I increased it by 10%, we'd go to 100. And then if I said we went 50, we'd go to 474. I'm just raising these here by 2%. Each one of them, 2%. So collectively, that's 20%. So if you were doing $1 million, 10% is 100 grand, 20%. So you can see where I'm going. But you can see the new annual profit is 325,000. Impact over 5 years is 600,000. It's a 63% increase by just doing 2%. Imagine if I did 10%. How much would that number grow? See, the math can be incredible. This is an example of what we do in each one of these things. And you can see here how to downsell. We talked about upsells and cross sells. Can help you going straight down there, bundling, how to get more appointments, how to lower your overhead costs, how to raise your prices, how to increase longevity, frequency, how to lower your cost of goods. Each of those are strategies that have tactics. And imagine if you could change any one of those things by 2%, your business could have an impact of 63% revenue over the course of a year. So with that, whoops, did I skip one? No, that's what I did. So bottom line is here, marketing is something you and I do every single day. We are being marketed to every single day. There's some things that you and I can do. There's some languaging we can do. There's the understanding of what's going on in our minds, what's taking place, that if we understood it, we might see why we're so prone to buy something or not buy something, how we need to listen differently because we see what's going on and how it's not going along. There's some very specific things we can do if we have a business. If we promote an upsell, it's a 33% increase in revenue if we just have a single upsell in our business. 33% revenue. You don't need to wait 90 days. You can do it right now. These changes in mental thinking over the course of a quarter, you can absolutely change your income and grow significantly just by changing how you think and becoming aware of it. You can actually raise your prices by 10%. And you could have a 30 to 50% increase in revenue depending on your product and the pricing of it, just by raising it by 10% and realizing most people won't leave. But even if they did, 25% of them could leave and you'll still be at the same revenue value. And lastly, I shouldn't say lastly, if you're in the marketing space, consider having a message that talks about the thing that's obvious, but nobody's saying, and that you can become anchored in people's minds by being the first guy that said that. It's Avis and Hertz. Avis used to say, we're number 2. And people said, why would you broadcast that? Well, it became anchored in everybody's mind that they were number 2 and that everybody feels sorry for the underdog. And so they created that emotion, that underdog emotion that helped them become number 1. So they used 2 of those heuristics at the very beginning. And they didn't mind being called number 2 because the bottom line is what they were looking at. If they were making 100 million, they didn't care if Hertz was making 101 million. Their shareholders were thrilled with making 100 million. And then lastly, look at yourself and say, how can I begin to dominate my marketplace? I can't afford to become common because if I'm just another player in the market, then the only thing I can offer someone is a cheaper price. And that's a quick road down if the only thing you can do is offer or lower your prices. So those are 5 things you can do in marketing. Those are 5 things you can consider if you're just a buyer of products that can change and actually make you as a person more profitable by understanding how the money is working before it ever gets to you and how people are trying to get you to make a buying decision. Making buying decisions is great. And it's great when you realize I made a great one, to be redundant with my words there. So make really good buying decisions by understanding how you're being trained to make buying decisions. And then you'll make better ones when you understand that. So if you want to get some more information on this, or you want to have we go through an exploratory conversation, you see the phone number there. In fact, Scott, I should take your text thing and I should have it right up on here now and they could take a picture, but I didn't do that this time. So if you just text the word Randy to that phone number there, 714-706-1040, you'll get a text right back. And I'm not even asking for your email. You can go there. I'm not here to bother you. I'm not here to send you 60,000 text messages. You might get that one and one more that says thanks, and that's it. So, Scott, I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully that will, at least as you go throughout the day, in your mind, you're going to be thinking some of these thoughts are, wow, I'm being triggered. That guy's triggering me. and you'll find out people, it's funny when I've done this before, people come back and they'll write the next day. Sometimes, you know what? I didn't think about it so much my business, but realize my husband's doing that to me every day. He takes me back and says, do you remember when we were first married, when we said this? And so he goes back to those anchors. And so we use these things all the time. It's just, we've never been explained to us before.
Yeah, we do often forget sometimes the obvious things, especially when you're in the business of doing stuff on a regular basis. You forget some of the basic stuff that most people don't recognize. What is a note? You mentioned the note guy. That was something that I took on because it's what people said when I was out speaking, like, hey, you're that note guy on YouTube. You're that note guy. And it stuck, and it was an obvious thing to embrace and market with going forward. And that's the thing is, I think everybody gets so bogged down is like, I got to try to replicate, or I'm competing against Scott or Donna Bauer or Desi Arnaz or anything like that. Standing out individually works in your favor versus trying to replicate most of the time. Would you agree to that, Randy? I mean, it's good to borrow or steal ideas, but make them always your own. There's always room for more, right?
Yeah. I had a realtor, and he was just only 1 year in the business. And every time I saw him, he was always going barefoot. He just liked being barefooted. So I told him, I said, why don't we go take pictures of houses and always show your feet and then cut away? And so now he markets himself as the barefoot realtor. And as he goes in the community, everybody knows who that is, just because it was unique.
Mm-hmm.
It had nothing to do with selling real estate whatsoever.
Yeah. I think one of the best things I always crack up is if you've ever seen the movie I Love You, Man.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd. And the billboards that they put up in that article about, the bond, or, the Pistol Pete, or, in the beach, or, you know what I mean? It's okay to be unique. And we all have our own unique story. The barefoot realtor, the short sale queen, the rock. We got Bill Twyford tomorrow, the rock star investor. There's a lot of things that we all can use to leverage and helps identify. That's one of the greatest things we have found from our masterminds, our one-on-one coaching. There's a lot of things that people have in common besides note investing, and that can lead, single moms, or we found a lot of people homeschool their kids that are investors. We found also a lot of people are musically inclined. You know what I mean? And that's the thing is, I think so many people get so bogged down. Try thinking inside the box. It's okay to be different, and that thinking outside the box can help you increase a little bit at a time. I mean, we're not talking huge. You don't have to try to double your income. You just increase it a little bit, or increase your marketing a little bit, goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, and Scott, one of the things that I realize about you, when you look at the caliber of people that you have on these conferences, somebody could ask, well, how do I evaluate Scott's stuff? And if you think of some of the things that we've talked about here, and I did it with you in a sense, is Scott meaningful, valuable? Is he relevant to what my people care about? Does Scott do that? Scott can be called the note guy, but if I know that that's kind of a marketing positioning, what's behind that now? And you start to examine, kind of peel away the onions. So don't get caught up into the name. Don't buy from the barefoot realtor because it's a clever, name. Buy from him because he can take care of what you need.
Yeah.
So if we realize on the surface, that's always going to get us in the door. But once you're in the door, you've got to say, whoa, now that I'm here, I need to do my due diligence on this side of the fence. And you've done that, and you've done it for people, which is the great thing, is they don't have to worry about, you don't have people on here that you haven't vetted, that are already, they're relevant, they're meaningful, they're valuable to the kinds of people that you talk to. So you've done that for them so they can actually do this freely. But people wouldn't know that's part of your process. It's kind of like what we said, Scott, tell them the obvious. Tell them what you do when you vet people, because it tells people, wow, I didn't know Scott did all of that. They got to go do this. They got to do this, got to do this. It's one of those tools that sometimes we take for granted. People will just assume I do all that stuff. No, they don't. They don't know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also too, I hate to say this, but a lot of people won't even do the bare minimum.
Oh,
like when I would teach live workshops, one of the things that I would always do is I'd give everybody the registration list. Like, hey, we got 50, 100 people at a workshop. You hang around on the fourth day, I'm going to give you the list of everybody here. So you don't have to worry about trying to run around, catch business cards. It allows for you to focus on it. And then I was always judge success by those that sent an email out within 48 hours of the end day. They got the list, and you would know who would be successful because they would start implementing things or start doing some things. They start reaching out and building those connections. And religiously, 90% of people won't even send that hello email out afterwards. It was nice meeting you, let's connect, or stuff like that. But the 10% that did, it didn't have to be notes. They were successful at notes or fix and flipping or short-term rentals or whatever it was. I like notes, but whatever it was, because they did take that action. implement. They found the value. They wanted to build upon that little bit of a connection and go from there. And that's a simple thing. It didn't have to be anything fancy. It was just that first email. And most people won't even do that little bit extra to get above it. And that's the thing about real estate or investing in your business. A lot of people, if you were to build a house, Randy, you wouldn't want your contractors cutting corners. Can we agree to that?
Amen to that.
I'm going to cut some corners off here. So using 2x6s, I'm going to use 1x4s. You know what I mean? Instead of putting, instead of putting a concrete foundation down, we're just going to put it on dirt with no, pier and beam or anything like that. A lot of people's businesses, when it comes to marketing, they're marketing like they're trying to cut corners, and that's the worst thing you can do. It doesn't have to be expensive, because you said there are simple things you can do to get the word out and what you're doing and just stand out. And that's the thing that always bugs the heck out of me. What's the least amount that I have to do to be successful? Well, the least amount is nothing, because you're not going to be, you can be successful at doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, one of the things we hear all the time in sales and marketing is that, a sale's not made until you've made 12 touches.
Yeah.
So we hear that all the time. But the fact, or this stat that's even more critical, is that nothing really happens before the fourth one. So a lot happens after 4, but if you're not doing 4, you're not in the game.
Yeah.
And so I ask, how many people have a follow-up process of at least 4? No hands go up.
Less than 5%, I bet you.
Yeah, no hands go up.
Yep.
No hands go up. And to take to our talk here, if you're ever doing a cold calling, there's one word you never, ever want to use. And that's the word follow-up. Don't call someone up and say, well, listen, I'll follow up with you. That is a sales trigger. Only salespeople follow up. Everybody else gets touch bases. I'll get back with you. I'll do this. But you don't typically say follow up unless you're in a sales or marketing situation. So don't have your talk on the phone and say, well, listen, can I follow up with you? No, because follow up is the thing you do before you close. Mm-hmm. And people don't have to react to it, but it's one of those, cognitive biases. When you hear that, you tighten up because you go, oh no, I know what he's going to say when he calls me back. I don't want that. And so they're suddenly too busy, and you don't know why you're not getting the appointments, because some of the language you use just triggers. That's why those triggers are so critical. There's so many of them. We just don't know what they are.
Yep. That is definitely the truth. There are triggers out there all the time. And it's so easy today to continue those relationships, those touches. Mm-hmm. Can I touch base with you next month? Not follow up. Do you mind if I touch base with you once a quarter? What's the best time to touch base with you? We see that in banking with us contacting asset managers a lot of times, once a month. Pretty easy to create an email campaign. It's pretty simple. It goes out to it. Heck, our speaker earlier yesterday, Michael Jimenez, talked about that, reaching out to people on LinkedIn and touching base with people there, sending an email blast, or just little simple things that you can do once a month, but it builds long-term success. And most people, this drives me batty. It just drives me. Don't follow up. It's the one email, the one phone call, and they never follow up with anything. And they wonder why they don't have success. Either raising capital or finding deals or making connections and networking, grow your audience. It's all about a touch point, and that people are watching you. Most people are used to that first email, but that they don't see a second, third, fourth, fifth one. They know that you're flaked off and gone on to something else for the most part.
And Scott, behind that, more than just the quantity of the number, when you do it, and not everybody does it like you do it, but that you do it, you're providing something that's helpful to that person. So it's not just, I'm in your face 12 times, buy from me. It's those 12 times provided meaningful or valuable content. It helped me make a decision, or gave me peace of mind about a decision I already made, or gave me information about a future decision. So that not contacting is really missing the opportunity to that one-on-one relationship that you're trying to build. You can't build it unless you're talking with them. And if you don't start that, it'll never happen.
Yeah, and that's all about the adding value side of things. You got to add value. That's why we have the survey that we do, getting people to fill it out. Because if you want us to focus on a subject, just put it on the survey. We'll cover it at some point. And that's the adding the value aspect of it. Hey, what's your biggest need, or your biggest strength, or your biggest goal? How can we help be accountable for you, or help hold you accountable? Not cannibal, accountable. Sorry.
I'm not even going to touch what that subliminally you were doing there.
We don't want you to eat yourself, but anyway.
Oh my gosh. you know what's funny, Scott, and I'll segue out here is, marketing is a topic that, believe it or not, it really has to come before everything, because you don't have a sale unless you got a message that invites someone. You don't have operations unless you have sales. And then you don't have employees and issues unless you got operations going on. But today, as I talk with business owners and people around the country, the number one thing that people don't want to do and don't see the need for is marketing. It's the first thing they quit when times get tough. And then when they come to me, they say, boy, I'm in dire straits. I need to get more clients, but I can't afford marketing. And that's the very thing that gets them the clients. And so it's kind of like that anchoring. They've all been taught that marketing is something you spend money on. It's not something you invest in your business. And if I have no idea what your bottom lines and your P&L looks like, but I dare say you have a marketing budget. There's a fair amount of money that you spend on it. And you could probably say, if I didn't spend this money, I wouldn't have a bottom line. It's just part of being in business is you spend money to get clients. In fact, the purest business, the proof of it is if you can spend $1 and get a client, you have a business. All you got to do is price it so you get a profit. That's 101 business is you buy a customer through either marketing or advertising. And then when they pay you, it pays your costs and you have money left over for you. And for some reason today, I don't know if it's generational, but people don't see that. And what they want to do is they want the easy way out. They want to get customers through social media, but they want it all organic. They don't want to spend any money or time. They want it to come to them without actually investing in it.
Yeah, that's a rough thing. And that's always drives me kind of bonkers, as well as looking at, I'll give a great example. Emails, it's a CRM right off the bat. Okay. Most people, and that's the thing is I see people like, oh, I'm not going to pay $50 for like MailChimp. I'm like, okay, MailChimp's pretty easy to use. You're going to have some context. There's a free service of it for like 2,000 contacts to start off with. Yeah. Well, my Infusionsoft bill or Keep bill for email is, I think, $700 a month. And then we also have ClickFunnels that we use. We also have MailChimp. We got like 3 different things I do besides our text messaging. We're spending over $1,000 a month on email marketing. Now we've got a big database of that stuff like that, but it's an investment. It's an investment in our part that I know I've got to be marketing something each day. Every day I start off with a marketing mindset. What do we have to do? Am I on a podcast? Am I recording a podcast? Do I have an email that needs to go out for something that we're doing, whether it's a deal that we're selling, or a deal we're trying to get funding for, or content? It's a day in, day out aspect of things. Now, not everybody needs to do that or needs to have that big initial budget for that. You start off smaller. I started off very small, free, very, very free account with MailChimp, but you have to start building it. And that's the way I look at it. Every contact in my database is valuable to me in some sort of fashion. Everybody's a buyer, everybody's a seller, or everybody's a funding source. And I can add value to them in all 3 phases. Sometimes it's just one phase, and that's totally fine. If people unsubscribe from my list, I'm totally fine with it. Thank you very much for doing that. But that's the most important thing is people just don't do the simple things. And that's really the lifeblood of a business. You think about all the emails that we get, and yeah, social media can be free, but we all know there's filter there. Anytime you try to buy a free thing, a sort of free account, you really are at the mercy of that tool and what they do. And like we know, Facebook filters who people see your profiles, with it 5% or less. Okay. It can be free on there, but those aren't just because you're commenting or liking somebody's video or TikTok. Are you really adding anything? Are you really sharing anything? Are you really adding any value to that? Probably not. And that's one of the things that we tell people all the time. Like, look, if you find an article, share it, add some value to somebody, send an email out once a week. And we're not talking daily or hourly. Once a week is the minimum touch base you have with your database.
Yeah. And it's fun as a grandparent now. Fundamentally, I market to my grandkids. And how do I do that? Regular contact, little things that I do, remind them, it triggers, it anchors. They remember the thing I did when they were, and it's funny, we're human social creatures. We want to have contact and we respond to it. So it's just so natural. And Scott, I speak about you all the time in the sense of, I don't know anybody that has taken such a grip on understanding not just marketing, but providing value to people over and above and beyond what everybody else in the industry does. I mean, you just set yourself apart as a guy that cares. You're approachable, you're easygoing, and yet when you look at what you deliver on, it's top notch all the way. And it's I'm sure everybody that's part of your conference and seminars and meetings all over the time is just really, really appreciative of how much you better their lives because of their association with you. So thanks for, hey, it's been great meeting you and hanging out with you these times. And I hope it continues for a long time. And when you hit my age, I'll be, oh gosh, who knows?
Well, I appreciate that. The whole point is I was very blessed early on in my note investing career. I mean, total God blessed me on the front end, learning, having basically a 4-year apprenticeship with Bob Leonetti and Jimmy Kayla. And through them, I met Ron LeGrand and Bill Barnett, who spoke yesterday, and a bunch of other people out there. And so I've always promised that, hey, I would try to deliver as much content as I can in people's lives to help them make decisions. I mean, that's the whole reason for Note Camp. C, content. A, actions. M, marketing. P, profit generating stuff, nuggets and tools that you can use in your business today. So Randy, I appreciate you speaking here on Note Camp and delivering those 4 fundamental pillars of Note Camp to our audience today, man.
Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much again. And I hope the day goes well. I'm going to try to, it's a busy Friday today, but I'm going to try to jump in. There's a couple here things I'd like to see with some of you. Well, you're on tomorrow too, right?
We're on all weekend through Sunday. Sunday, 6 o'clock is when we wrap up. So yeah, today, tomorrow, and Sunday.
Now, should I log in using this? Because this is going to put me in a panel mode.
I will just move you to a trade. I'll just move you to an attendee. If you come on, I'll just bump you over to attendee.
Good. Got it. Good. I was afraid that I'd do that. So great. Well, good. Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate it. Have a blessed rest of the day, and I'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Randy.
Okay, bud. Bye-bye now.